On the coldest, wettest night, a blind wife is dumped on the courthouse steps and called useless. Two predators close in until a mafia boss steps from a black SUV and says, "Get in for 10 minutes." 10 minutes turns into a dangerous deal. Shelter for 1 week, and her razor-sharp hearing saves his crew from a trap. Suddenly, she's labeled the mobster's mistress, hunted by enemies and forced to stay in his world, where he's lethal to everyone but gentle to her. Then the twist. Her ex is tied to a fake vision charity that killed her medical chance, while a rival dangles a back-alley cure if she betrays the boss on camera. In the dark, she guides him through a rescue like a human sonar, and he makes a real, legal path to light, something no one else would even try. But the truth he hides could be the very reason she lost her sight. If the man who broke the world for her might have helped break her first, will she choose justice, or the only love that finally lets her see? The rain pelts Charlotte's face as she processes Gavin's final act of cruelty. The wet papers crumple in her grip, their edges already softening. She forces herself to breathe, to focus on the acoustics around her, the way sound bounces off the courthouse's granite facade, the splash of tires through puddles, the steady drip from the overhang above. The two men's footsteps scrape closer. Their movements create distinct patterns against the wet concrete, deliberate, practiced, predatory. Charlotte's fingers tighten around her cane as she calculates distances, angles, escape routes. The white noise of rain helps her build a mental map of the space. In the idling SUV, Conrad Vale ends his call, his attention caught by the scene unfolding. The woman stands alone, yet her posture speaks of quiet strength rather than vulnerability. Her cane sweeps in small, precise arcs as she orients herself. "Your engine has a misfire on cylinder 3, she calls out suddenly, her voice carrying clearly despite the downpour. "And someone's tailing you, same idle, 2 cars back." Conrad's eyebrows lift. He's been aware of the tail, but the engine diagnosis is news to his mechanic. He steps out into the rain, his expensive shoes clicking against wet stone as he approaches. The two men closing in on Charlotte hesitate, recognizing him instantly. "Leave," Conrad commands, his voice soft but carrying an edge that brooks no argument. The men retreat without a word, melting back into the shadows of the courthouse columns. Charlotte's head tilts slightly, tracking the men's departure through sound alone. "I didn't need saving," she says, but her shoulders relax fractionally. "Not saving," Conrad replies. "Appreciating expertise. That engine diagnosis. How did you know?" "The same way I know you're 6'2", wearing Italian leather and carrying concealed on your left side," she answers. "I listen." Rain streams down her face, but she doesn't wipe it away. Her dark hair clings to her neck, and her simple blazer is already soaked through. She looks like a warrior goddess, Conrad thinks, standing her ground despite everything. "Let me offer you a ride," he says. "The rain's getting worse." "I prefer to know where I'm going," Charlotte responds, her tone careful but not fearful. 10 minutes, Conrad counteroffers. "To somewhere more public. You can decide after that." A small crowd has gathered at the bottom of the courthouse steps, phones raised to capture the tableau, the blind woman and the man whose reputation precedes him. Charlotte can hear the whispers, the electronic clicks of cameras. "Those people filming," she says. "They know who you are." "Yes, and that's going to be a problem." "Potentially," Conrad admits. "But right now, the bigger problem is that your ex-husband's friends haven't actually left. They're circling the block." Charlotte's fingers flex on her cane. She processes this information, weighing risks against necessities. The rain intensifies, drumming against the pavement with renewed fury. A camera flash goes off, followed by several more. 10 minutes, she finally agrees. Conrad guides her to the SUV with a gentleman's precision, neither hovering nor presuming. He describes each step, each transition, but never touches her without permission. Charlotte notes how he positions himself between her and the growing crowd, using his body as a shield from their prying eyes. The SUV's door opens with a solid thunk. Charlotte maps the frame with her free hand, finding her way into the leather seat with practiced efficiency. The interior smells of cedar and expensive wool. The engine's subtle misfire creates a rhythm she can feel through the floorboards. "Your mechanic should check the fuel injectors," she says, as Conrad slides into the driver's seat. "The timing's off by a fraction." "I'll have it done tomorrow," he responds, and she hears the smile in his voice. "Where would you feel comfortable going?" "Somewhere with witnesses," Charlotte says frankly. "And multiple exits." "The Marina District Cafe strip," Conrad suggests. Open-air seating, heavy foot traffic, 6 different ways out. 8, if you count the service alleys. Charlotte appreciates that he lists the escape routes without prompting. Acceptable, she says. Though I should warn you, I'm about to become very bad for your reputation. Because of the cameras just now. Because my ex-husband is about to start a very public smear campaign, and anyone associated with me will be collateral damage. She turns her face toward him, her unseeing eyes somehow finding his exact position. Those photos they just took, they'll be on every gossip site within the hour. Blind woman seeks protection from crime lord. That's if they're kind. They probably won't be. The SUV pulls smoothly away from the curb. Charlotte feels the shift in air pressure as they accelerate, counts the turns in her head, builds her mental map of their route. Your reputation matters to you, she continues. Your control of narrative matters more. I'm about to become a liability. You're making assumptions about my priorities, Conrad replies mildly. I'm making observations based on available data. The way your security team moves, the respect radius people give you, the quality of your vehicle and clothes. You've built something substantial. Protecting me puts that at risk. 10 minutes, Conrad reminds her. Then you decide. Charlotte nods once, her fingers tracing the edge of the annulment papers, still clutched in her hand. They're completely soaked now, the ink probably running. It doesn't matter. She has the contents memorized. Every cruel word, every false accusation, every attempt to paint her as incompetent and unstable. The SUV stops at a light, and Charlotte hears the distinct sound of another vehicle pulling up 2 cars behind them, the same engine that had been at the courthouse, still following. Your tale is persistent, she comments. They usually are, Conrad agrees. Does that concern you? No, Charlotte says simply, but your response to it might. The elevator glides upward, a glass and steel capsule ascending through Conrad's building. Charlotte's fingers drift along the panel edges, mapping every seam and button. The soft whoosh of filtered air tells her stories about the shaft's architecture, about maintenance access points, about escape routes she hopes she'll never need. 42nd floor, Conrad says quietly. The entire level is secure. Charlotte nods, counting the subtle changes in air pressure. 3 separate ventilation zones, recent filter change on the east side. He makes a sound of quiet appreciation. How can you tell? Less dust in the circulation, cleaner airflow pattern. Her cane taps against the elevator's back wall. And this isn't standard steel, reinforced. Yes. The doors open to the penthouse, and Charlotte catalogs the space through her remaining senses. Leather and wood, the mineral scent of glass cleaner, a hint of Earl Grey tea. The air moves differently here. High ceilings, open concept, with subtle cross-currents that sketch invisible maps. Tea? Conrad offers. Please. He moves to what must be the kitchen, his footsteps precise on hardwood floors. Charlotte follows the sound of running water, building her mental blueprint. A draft from her left suggests a balcony door. Another current, barely detectable, hints at a hidden hallway. Here. He places something ceramic near her hand. And a towel for your hair. The towel is impossibly soft. The tea is perfectly hot. Charlotte wraps her fingers around the cup, letting its warmth seep into her rain-chilled hands. Tell me about the clinical trial, he says. Charlotte takes a careful sip before answering. Experimental stem cell therapy, potentially restorative for certain types of optic nerve damage. Her voice remains steady. I was an ideal candidate, until suddenly I wasn't. When? Last month. No explanation given. Just removed from the program. Conrad is silent for a moment, then. Your husband's timing seems convenient. Ex-husband, Charlotte corrects. And yes, the timing was noteworthy. A phone chirps somewhere in the room. Encrypted communication, Charlotte realizes. Even muted, she can hear the distinctive pattern of security protocols. You caught that, Conrad observes. The encryption artifacts are quite distinctive. Military grade, I'd guess, but with custom modifications. He moves closer, interest sharpening his tone. How detailed is your audio analysis? Detailed enough to map rooms by echo, to identify individuals by gait, to spot surveillance equipment by electronic whine. She sets down her tea. Which is why you're considering offering me shelter in exchange for consulting work. A week, he confirms. Voluntary basis. Your expertise with sound patterns could be invaluable for our surveillance operations. Terms? Your own room, lock under your control, no physical contact without your explicit consent. Full autonomy to accept or decline any request. Charlotte considers this. The rain still drums against the windows, but softer now, 42 stories up. Show me the work first. Hours later, she's seated at a monitoring station, headphones feeding her a live wire intercept. The operation is straightforward. Routine surveillance of a courier pickup point until something catches her attention. Wait, she says sharply. Play back the last 30 seconds. The technician complies. There, beneath the surface noise and conversation, a mechanical ticking that doesn't belong. Pull your people back, Charlotte orders. There's a device in that locker. Conrad doesn't hesitate. All units fall back. Possible explosive device. The bomb squad later confirms. A sophisticated trigger mechanism, professionally installed. The blast would have taken out half the block. Evening finds Charlotte showered and changed, wearing a borrowed sweater that feels like clouds against her skin. She sits at the kitchen island, twirling plain pasta on her fork while Conrad maintains his distance across the counter. You saved lives today, he says. I identified a sound pattern, she corrects. Your team did the dangerous part. Still, there's something in his voice, respect maybe, or fascination. Will you stay until Monday at least? Charlotte sets down her fork, reaches for her phone and the panic button she's carried since the trial rejection, places them on the counter in a precise line. Until Monday, she agrees. Conrad touches his earpiece. Rox, our guest is staying. She's a protected asset now. A pause. Treat her like family. In the silence that follows, Charlotte catalogs new details. The subtle shift in building security patterns, the added footsteps in the hallway, the way Conrad's breath changes when he looks at her. She wonders what he sees. The blind woman who caught his assassins, the consultant who prevented a massacre, or something else entirely. The night settles around them, 42 stories above the city. Charlotte sips her cooling tea and listens to the whisper of air handlers, to the secret language of the building systems, to all the things that speak without words. She's learning to read this new territory, this unexpected sanctuary with its dangerous guardian. Somewhere in the distance, thunder growls. Charlotte counts the seconds until lightning splits the sky, calculating the storm's approach. Some instinct tells her this isn't the only storm gathering, but for now she has walls and warmth, and a man who asks permission before he moves. The scent of fresh bread and eggs wafts through the penthouse kitchen as dawn paints the sky in shades Charlotte can only remember. She sits at the island counter, fingers tracing the smooth metal bracelet Conrad holds. It's connected directly to my security network, he explains. Press once for attention, twice for urgent, 3 times for emergency. Charlotte runs her thumb along the clasp. I can remove it myself? Yes, the release mechanism is here. He guides her fingers to a subtle catch. No locks, no tricks. She extends her wrist. Proceed. The bracelet clicks softly as he secures it, his movements precise and controlled. He steps back immediately, maintaining the careful distance she's come to expect. Her phone buzzes at 10:47 a.m. Multiple notifications cascade in rapid succession, her screen reader struggling to keep pace. Headlines scream about the mob boss's new mistress and blind beauty's criminal romance. The photos from yesterday, her stepping into Conrad's SUV, have gone viral. Well, she says dryly, that's unfortunate timing. Conrad's phone rings. The conversation is brief, his tone shifting from controlled to dangerous. Your ex-husband is busy this morning. He's listing your apartment and... He pauses. Rox, confirm the banking details. Charlotte opens her banking app, enters the familiar pattern. Already done. He's drained the accounts. She attempts a small donation to the Foundation for Site Research, declined for insufficient funds. Every penny. That's not all. Rox's voice carries from the doorway. Her boots make no sound on the marble floor, a deliberate courtesy Charlotte has noticed. 3 rival organizations have flagged her name as potential leverage. They're watching, boss. Which means walking out alone is equivalent to painting a target on your back, Conrad states. Charlotte straightens her spine. I don't accept that. I have options. Test them, he suggests, no challenge in his voice. She pulls out her phone, dials her sister's number. The conversation lasts exactly 94 seconds. She counts each one, listening to her sister's voice grow colder as she repeats Gavin's claims. Unstable, paranoid, making dangerous choices. He got to them first, Charlotte says after hanging up. Methodical man. My ex-husband. You need secure accommodation, Conrad says. Somewhere defensible, where you can train and rest. Train? Sound mapping larger spaces, security protocols, whatever skills you want to develop. He pauses. I have a property that would suit. Former brewery converted. Open floor plan, excellent acoustics. The drive to the safe house takes 23 minutes. Charlotte counts intersections, maps turns in her head. The building smells of old brick and new steel, with high ceilings that carry sound in clean, readable ways. Main floor is training space, Rox explains as they tour. Your suite is upper level, corner position, best sight lines. She catches herself. Best defensive position. Show me, Charlotte requests. They do, with professional precision. Every surface is labeled with raised markers. Storage is arranged under the bed, exactly where she can reach. The bathroom has non-slip mats and a shower stool adjusted to her height. Even the closet has been organized with tactile dividers. The staff who prepared this, Charlotte observes, they've worked with blind residents before. Yes, Conrad confirms. My mother lost her sight 3 years before she died. The team remembers her preferences. That explains much about his instinctive accommodations, Charlotte realizes. The way he announces his presence, how he describes spaces in terms of sound and texture. She explores the room methodically, building its dimensions in her mind. The windows face east and north. She can feel morning sun on both walls. The door is solid steel with 3 deadbolts she can operate by touch. The floors are smooth concrete that will telegraph approaching footsteps. A security panel chimes softly. Perimeter breach at the main gate, Rox reports. Paparazzi found us. I'll handle it. Charlotte stands in the doorway, listening to the efficient movement of Conrad's security team. Camera shutters click in the distance. Somewhere in the city, Gavin is probably watching the chaos unfold, satisfied with his handiwork. Her apartment is being emptied. Her accounts are bare. Her family believes she's unstable. There's no safe way back, she says, tasting the truth of it. Then there's only forward, Conrad replies. The words hang in the air between them, heavy with promise and warning. Charlotte runs her fingers over the bracelet, mapping its contours. 3 clicks for emergency, 2 for urgent, 1 for attention. A lifeline wrapped in steel, offered by a man who deals in death, but asks permission to touch her. The brewery's old bones creak around them, settling into afternoon quiet. Charlotte categorizes new sounds. The hum of reinforced security glass, the whisper of surveillance cameras, the steady rhythm of guards pacing their routes. This is what safety sounds like now. Not silence, but controlled danger. She thinks of her former life, built on carefully maintained independence, of the clinical trial that might have restored her sight, snatched away without explanation, of Gavin's methodical dismantling of her support systems. Each loss should feel like a step backward, but standing here, in this fortress of brick and steel, she senses something different taking shape. Rox's boots approach, heel-toe pattern unique to her stride. Perimeter's clear. We've installed signal jammers for the cameras. Do you need anything else from the penthouse, Charlotte? No, she answers, surprised to find it true. Everything essential is here. Good, Conrad says. Shall we begin? Again, Rox commands, her voice echoing off the brewery's brick walls. Count the steps by sound reflection. Charlotte taps her cane against the floor, listening to the acoustics bounce between support columns. 7 to the first pillar, 12 to the stairs, 4 to clear the mezzanine overhang. Good. Now faster. They've been at this for hours. Charlotte maps the space through echoes, learning how sound bends around corners and reflects off different surfaces. The wall wash lighting creates subtle temperature variations she can feel on her skin, another orientation point to add to her mental blueprint. From the mezzanine above, Conrad observes silently. His presence is marked only by the occasional shift of weight on the steel grating, a sound Charlotte has already cataloged as uniquely his. Show me the quick draw, Rox instructs. Charlotte demonstrates the modified cane technique, a swift, fluid movement from folded to extended position. She'd developed it years ago, tired of fumbling when she needed her mobility aid quickly. Efficient, Rox approves. But you'll need more than that if someone grabs you. Let's work on breaking holds. First, Charlotte interrupts, we establish ground rules. If you're planning to use me as bait, I need agency in the strategy. Agreed, Conrad says from above. His footsteps trace the mezzanine's edge. What are your terms? No using my name over comms, too easy to track. Rox makes a thoughtful sound. You need a call sign, something that fits your skill set. Nightbird, Charlotte suggests. since I navigate best in darkness. Nightbird it is, Conrad confirms. Rox, update the security protocols. They break for lunch, sandwiches that Charlotte can eat neatly, maintaining dignity despite her blindness. She sits at the conference table, building a profile of each team member by their movements. Marcus shuffles his feet when thinking. Sarah has a slight limp from an old injury. Diego's boots squeak on left turns. I want to hear the rivals' communications, Charlotte says between bites. The ones you've intercepted. Conrad plays a recorded call through the room's speakers. Charlotte listens intently, filtering through layers of sound. Street noise, wind, voices discussing drop points and schedules. Then, there, a bell tolls in the background, its ring slightly distorted. That bell has a crack in it, she says. The overtone is wrong, and it rings every 15 minutes, probably a chapel. There's an abandoned church district on the east side, Rox confirms. Several buildings under renovation. Play it again? Charlotte closes her eyes. Unnecessary, but habitual, and focuses. Wind direction, traffic patterns, the bell's acoustic signature, bouncing off stone. She builds the location in her mind. Later, during the reconnaissance briefing, she outlines her findings. The wind picks up from the southeast around 4 p.m. It'll mask any drone noise. And the bell schedule gives you a perfect entry window. The quarter-hour rings will cover approach sounds. The team absorbs this, and Charlotte can sense their shift from skepticism to respect. She's not just a liability to protect. She's an asset with unique skills. As evening approaches, storms roll in. Charlotte settles on a leather couch, listening to rain drum against the roof. The day's training has left her mentally and physically exhausted. The couch's leather is butter soft beneath her fingers, and she finds herself drifting. In her dreams, she's back on the courthouse steps. Rain soaks through her clothes, but this time when Gavin pushes her, she falls endlessly through darkness. She jerks awake with a gasp. A blanket slides from her shoulders. Someone covered her while she slept. Conrad's footsteps approach, stopping at a precise distance that lets her track his position without feeling crowded. Cocoa, he offers. My mother's recipe. Charlotte nods, grateful for the normality of the gesture. She counts his steps to the kitchen, the clink of mugs, the careful measurement of his return. He sets her mug on the coffee table with a soft tap to signal its location. The cocoa is rich and dark, with a hint of cinnamon. Charlotte wraps her hands around the warm ceramic, letting it ground her. Your mother, she says. Did she lose her sight suddenly or gradually? Gradually. It gave her time to adapt, but also time to fear what was coming. His voice holds old pain, carefully controlled. She taught me a lot about respect and adaptation. Charlotte sips her cocoa, processing this glimpse into what shapes his careful consideration of her needs. The storm growls overhead, but inside this fortress of brick and steel, she feels oddly secure. A device chirps. Encrypted communication coming in. Charlotte recognizes the specific tone Conrad's phone uses for priority messages. Confirmed, he reads. Target meeting scheduled in the Chapel District. Location matches your acoustic analysis perfectly. Of course it does, Rox says, and Charlotte hears the smile in her voice. Nightbird's got good ears. Charlotte sets down her mug, mind already mapping possibilities. The Chapel District's layout, the bell's schedule, the wind patterns that could mask or carry sound. She's no longer just surviving, she's becoming essential. The thought settles like armor around her shoulders, more comforting than any blanket. The rain continues its steady percussion, on the roof, but now it sounds less like threat and more like opportunity. Each drop is another data point in her growing understanding of this new world she inhabits. A world where her disability isn't weakness, but advantage, where safety comes not from hiding, but from strength. Walk me through the Chapel District layout, she says, sitting forward. I need to know every echo point, every acoustic shadow. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. The safe house falls quiet as midnight approaches. Charlotte sits in the command center, headphones fitted precisely over her ears, her cane laid across her lap like a barrier between worlds. The room hums with electronics, servers, monitors, backup systems. But she filters past them, focusing on the audio feed from Conrad's team. Their footsteps tell a story. Rox's precise heel-toe rhythm, Marcus's slight shuffle, and Conrad's measured stride. She builds their positions in her mind, tracking their approach to the chapel through the sounds of their movement against different surfaces. Concrete, gravel, worn stone steps. Wind's picking up southeast, she murmurs into her mic. Wait. A gust rushes through her audio feed. Now, The team moves forward, their steps masked by the whistling air. Charlotte's fingers tighten on her cane as she catches new signatures. 2 on the left, she warns, identifying the distinct sound of heavy combat boots. They're trying to flank you. Inside the chapel, acoustics shift. Every sound bounces differently off stone walls, wooden pews, and broken stained glass. She catalogs each echo, building a 3-dimensional map of sound. The team moves with practiced efficiency. She hears the muffled thuds of hand-to-hand combat, the sharp exhalations of controlled breathing. Conrad's voice comes through clearly as he interrogates someone, his tone carrying that controlled menace she's come to recognize. But there's something else, a subtle scrape that doesn't belong. Her heart jumps. "Behind 3 steps," she hisses urgently. The sound of rubber soles on splintered wood had given away the shooter trying to circle behind Conrad. There's a grunt, a thud, then silence. The fight ends in a symphony of impact sounds and harsh breathing. Charlotte maintains her vigil, counting heartbeats and footsteps until she's certain the area is clear. Her fingers have left impressions in her cane's handle. At exactly 3:12 a.m., the safe house door opens. Charlotte recognizes Conrad's footsteps immediately, slightly heavier than usual, favoring his right side. The metallic scent of blood reaches her, along with leather and gunpowder. "You kept me breathing, he says, his voice a low rasp that carries exhaustion and something deeper. The words fill the space between them, heavy with meaning. The acoustics were good, she deflects, but her pulse quickens at his proximity. She follows him to the medical station, counting his steps. The water runs as he cleans his hands, and Charlotte listens intently to the subtle variations in pressure that betray his trembling. Despite his controlled exterior, adrenaline still courses through him. The air changes as he turns toward her. Charlotte feels the weight of his attention like a physical touch. They share a breath, then another, the moment electric with possibility. Neither moves to close the distance. Instead, Conrad speaks softly. "May I?" He reaches for her hand, telegraphing his movement through sound and air currents. Charlotte nods, understanding this is about more than a simple touch. His fingers are warm despite the water's chill as they lift her hand. His lips press against her knuckles, a gesture both courtly and fierce in its restraint. It's a promise of protection, a request for trust, an acknowledgement of boundaries. She feels the slight roughness of day-old stubble, the careful pressure of his mouth, the way his breath catches almost imperceptibly. The kiss lasts exactly 3 seconds before he releases her, maintaining the precise distance she needs to feel secure. The generators provide a steady baseline hum as they move through the safe house, preparing for what remains of the night. Charlotte maps her way to her room, fingers trailing along the textured wallpaper Conrad had installed for her benefit. The rain outside has gentled, no longer the driving sheets of previous days, but a soft percussion against the windows. In her room, Charlotte removes her shoes and arranges them carefully by the door. Her cane goes in its designated holder, her clothes into the hamper she keeps exactly 3 steps from the bed. The routine grounds her, each movement practiced and precise. Through the wall, she hears Conrad in his own room, the soft thud of his shoulder holster being set aside, the creak of his bed as he sits. Between them, the building breathes. Ventilation systems, security measures, the steady pulse of generators that never sleep. Charlotte slides between cool sheets, letting the familiar sounds wash over her. The rain continues its gentle rhythm, a counterpoint to the mechanical heartbeat of the safe house. She's learning to read this place like Braille, every sound and vibration adding to her understanding. The night's events replay in her mind. The perfect timing of the wind, the revelation of her value beyond mere survival, the press of Conrad's lips against her hand. She touches her knuckles where his kiss still seems to linger, a phantom warmth in the darkness. The generators hum their lullaby, a sound that once seemed foreign, but now speaks of safety. As Charlotte drifts toward sleep, she realizes she's no longer counting exits or measuring distances to escape routes. Instead, she's mapping the space she's begun to think of as home, not just its physical boundaries, but the invisible lines of trust and protection that now web through her world. In his room, Conrad's breathing eventually evens out into sleep. Charlotte follows soon after, lulled by the symphony of rain and machines, of distance maintained and boundaries respected. The city moves toward dawn, and for the first time since the courthouse steps, both of them rest without shadows at their backs. The backup generators surge to life with a deep thrum that Charlotte feels resonating through her chest. The sudden power outage has plunged the neighborhood into darkness, But inside the brewery safehouse, emergency lights cast pools of amber warmth. The mechanical pulse of the backup system provides a steady counterpoint to her heartbeat. Charlotte sits with Conrad in the living area, the events of the previous night's operation still fresh between them. The kiss on her knuckles lingers in her memory like a brand. In this moment of artificial twilight, she finds herself drawn to the mystery of his presence beside her. "May I?" she asks, lifting her hands. "I'd like to know your face." Conrad shifts closer, the leather of the couch creaking softly. "Yes," he says, his voice low and controlled. Her fingers trace his features with careful precision. She starts at his temples, where the skin is smooth and warm. His brow is strong, interrupted by a scar that feels like a thin ridge beneath her touch. She explores its length, memorizing its shape. "How did you get this?" she asks, fingertips hovering over the mark. "Prague. 6 years ago. A piece of glass caught me during an extraction." Charlotte continues her exploration, mapping the close-cropped texture of his hair, the sharp architecture of his cheekbones. His jaw feels like carved stone beneath her touch, strong and unyielding. She catalogs every detail, building his image through touch and texture. When her thumb brushes his lower lip, the air between them changes, becomes charged with possibility. Charlotte takes a steady breath, centering herself in this moment of choice. "Kiss me," she says, her voice clear and certain. Slow, and only if I say yes. She feels him lean closer, his breath warm against her skin. He waits, letting her control the pace, the distance. The heat of his presence simmers, contained by her boundaries. "Yes," she whispers. His lips meet hers with exquisite restraint. The kiss is gentle, questioning, a conversation without words. Charlotte's world narrows to the points of contact between them. His mouth moving against hers, the warmth of his skin beneath her exploring fingers, the steady rise and fall of his chest. She tastes mint and coffee, feels the slight roughness of evening stubble against her palm. Time seems to slow, measured only by shared breaths and the persistent hum of generators. In this moment, Charlotte feels perfectly oriented, as if Conrad has become true north in her carefully mapped world. The kiss deepens gradually, heat building like a slow tide. Charlotte's fingers find the collar of his shirt, anchoring herself as she learns the shape of this new intimacy. Conrad's hand hovers near her waist, waiting for permission to touch. "Yes," she says again, and his palm settles warm and steady against her side. The moment shatters as alarms shriek from the perimeter. They break apart, both instantly alert. Running footsteps approach, Rox's distinctive stride, quick and purposeful. "Fuck!" Rox's voice carries from the control room, followed by the rapid-fire clicking of keyboards. Charlotte stands, orienting herself by the sound of Conrad's movement beside her. The generators seem louder now, their hum taking on an ominous tone. "Someone cloned my access card," Rox reports, her usual cool professionalism edged with fury. "They mapped the whole motion grid. Professional job." More footsteps join them as the security team mobilizes. Charlotte tracks their movements, building a picture of controlled chaos. Keyboards clatter as they access camera feeds, radio chatter fills the air with coded updates. "Sir," one of the tech team calls out. "External cameras picked up something, a courier about 20 minutes ago." "Show me," Conrad commands, his voice carrying the edge of contained violence Charlotte remembers from the chapel raid. The team reviews footage, their murmured observations painting a picture for Charlotte. A courier, looking legitimately lost, tucking something into his pocket before hurrying away. A dead drop, made to look accidental. "There," Rox says, "thumb drive. Left it right where we'd have to find it." "Bait," Charlotte observes. "But also proof. They want us to know they were here." "Agreed," Conrad says. "Isolate the device. Full containment protocols." Charlotte listens as they retrieve the thumb drive, tracking the careful procedures. The subtle crinkle of a Faraday pouch being opened, the snap as it's sealed again. Each sound carries implications, pieces of a puzzle she's determined to solve. She reaches out, finding Conrad's forearm with unerring accuracy. His muscles are tense beneath her fingers, coiled with controlled energy. The kiss from moments ago feels distant now, replaced by the weight of new threats. "If it's about me," she says firmly, gripping his arm, "I want to hear it with you." She feels him nod, his pulse steady beneath her touch. Together, they move toward the war room, Charlotte matching his stride perfectly. The generators continue their relentless rhythm, a mechanical heartbeat beneath their feet as they prepare to face whatever message their enemies have left behind. Charlotte's fingers dig into the edge of the conference table as the decoded data scrolls across screens. Her acute hearing picks up the subtle changes in breathing around the room, sharp intakes, muttered curses, as the evidence unfolds. Transaction records from the Vision Forward Foundation, Rox reports, her voice tight with controlled anger. Multiple shell companies, all feeding back to Gavin Hayes, Charlotte finishes, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. The name tastes bitter on her tongue. She straightens her spine, refusing to buckle under the weight of betrayal. Conrad stands near her, close enough that she can feel the heat radiating from his body, but maintaining the respectful distance she needs. The foundation received substantial donations, he says, each word precise and measured. Money that should have funded research trials, including mine. Charlotte's mind races through memories, fitting pieces together with devastating clarity. The board's denial letter came after the funds were already diverted. They never intended to give me a chance. She begins reciting from memory, her voice gaining strength with each detail. Dr. Sarah Chen, lead researcher. Marcus Weber, trial coordinator. June 15th, intake interview. July 3rd, preliminary screening. The dates and names flow like a river of lost possibilities. A quiet tap of keys follows each name as the team logs them for investigation. Conrad moves to the communications console, his voice dropping to that dangerous register that makes even his own people stand straighter. Full background checks on everyone involved. Track the shell companies to their source. Charlotte's cane taps against the floor as she paces, channeling nervous energy into motion. Her mental map of the room is perfect now. 16 steps, end to end, avoiding chairs at precise intervals. The rival crew, she says, they're using this to draw you out. Yes, Conrad doesn't sugarcoat it. They backed the foundation, knowing I'd eventually trace it. Around noon, Charlotte settles into a chair, phone in hand. Her fingers find the clinic's number without hesitation. The administrator's voice comes through crisp and professional, but Charlotte detects the underlying tension. This is Charlotte Hayes, she begins, activating the recording function Conrad's team installed. I'm calling to formally request documentation regarding my denied trial application. The administrator's response is textbook deflection. Those records are confidential, Ms. Hayes. The board's decision was final. But Charlotte catches it. The slight hitch in breathing, the subtle sound of a desk drawer closing, paper files rustling where everything should be digital. Her lips curve in a small, knowing smile. I understand, she says smoothly. I'll have my lawyer submit a formal records request. She ends the call, turning toward where she knows Conrad stands. They're keeping physical records, something they don't want in the system. The afternoon brings confirmation after confirmation. Rox's team traces money through a labyrinth of accounts, each leading back to the rival organization that's been pushing into Conrad's territory. They used me, Charlotte says, but there's steel in her voice, not defeat. They used my case to bait you, thinking I was already your weakness. She stands, movements precise and controlled. I won't be their symbol. I won't be anyone's victim. She faces Conrad's direction, chin lifted. I want to confront Gavin myself, somewhere public with law enforcement, nearby. He'll slip if he feels secure, especially if he thinks he's in control. The room goes quiet, waiting for Conrad's response. Charlotte can hear the subtle shift in his stance, the way his breath changes as he considers the risks. Your terms, he says finally, but I put 2 of my people in place before you arrive, and we set a strict timeline. Charlotte nods, already mapping out the confrontation in her mind. The cafe near the courthouse, 2 o'clock tomorrow, busy enough for witnesses, open enough for your team to watch approaches. If you're not out by exactly 2:45, Conrad says, his tone brooking no argument, I come in. Agreed. Charlotte reaches for her cane, her movements steady and purposeful. The generators continue their constant hum beneath her feet, but now they feel like a countdown, marking time until she faces the man who tried to steal her future. The team moves into planning mode around her. She listens as they coordinate positions, establish signals, map exit routes. Her fingers trace the panic button on her bracelet, a reminder that while she's choosing to face this alone, she's not without backup. Rox approaches, her boots making distinct clicks on the floor. I'll have the surveillance feeds from every angle. Nothing moves near that cafe without us seeing it. Charlotte nods, appreciating the confidence surrounding her. Her mind is already running through the conversation to come, anticipating Gavin's tactics. He'll try to charm first, then deflect, then attack when those fail. She knows his patterns like a familiar piece of music, and this time, she'll use that knowledge against him. The room continues to buzz with activity, but Charlotte remains still at its center, a point of calm in the storm. Tomorrow, she'll face the man who betrayed her, armed with evidence and righteous anger. But tonight, she lets herself feel the full weight of what she's learned, the calculated cruelty of stealing her chance at sight, the cold efficiency of using her pain as a game piece. Conrad moves closer, his presence solid and reassuring. He doesn't offer empty comfort or try to talk her out of her choice. Instead, he simply asks, "What do you need?" "Time," she answers, "and space to think." She turns toward the door, every movement measured and controlled. "I'll be in the training room. The acoustics help me focus." She leaves them to their preparations, her cane tapping out a steady rhythm as she walks. Tomorrow will bring confrontation and consequences, but tonight, she'll prepare in her own way, letting the empty space and perfect echoes of the training room help her find her center. The grandfather clock in Conrad's office strikes 11, each chime resonating through the quiet space. Charlotte sits in an armchair, fingers tracing the leather armrest while Conrad's restless energy fills the room. Neither has found sleep, the weight of tomorrow's confrontation with Gavin hanging between them. "There's something I need to tell you," Conrad says, his voice rougher than usual. The subtle shift in his breathing tells Charlotte he's moved to stand by the window. Rain patters against glass, a steady rhythm that usually soothes her but now feels ominous. 4 years ago, I made a decision. He pauses, and Charlotte hears him turn to face her. "We had a shipment that night. Police were closing in, setting up checkpoints on our usual routes. I redirected the convoy through residential streets, through your old neighborhood." Charlotte's fingers still on the leather. The air feels suddenly thin. "The same night," he continues, each word measured with painful precision. "There was a hit and run. A bystander was blinded. I've never known if our trucks spooked the driver who did it, or if we blocked an ambulance response. The timing? The location?" The floor seems to tilt beneath Charlotte's feet. Her mind races through fragments of memory. Screeching tires, multiple engines, the chaos of that night. She'd never seen the vehicle that hit her. Everything had gone dark too fast. "How long have you known?" she asks, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "I suspected when I saw your address in the old case files. Confirmed the possibility last week." Conrad's voice carries the weight of years of guilt. "I should have told you sooner." Charlotte stands, her cane finding purchase on the hardwood floor. The space between them feels charged with unspoken implications. She needs to think, to process this revelation that threads through both their lives like a dark string. "I need space," she says simply. "Of course." His response is immediate, respectful of her boundaries even now. She makes her way to her room, listening as Conrad's footsteps retreat toward the gym downstairs. Soon, the rhythmic sound of weights being lifted echoes through the building's steel beams, controlled, punishing sets that speak of self-recrimination. Charlotte lies awake in bed, her acute hearing picking up every rep, every controlled breath. The workout continues for hours, a physical manifestation of Conrad's guilt. She traces patterns in her memory, trying to align them with this new information. There's no way to prove the connection, but the possibility burns like acid in her throat. The night stretches on. Charlotte maps the ceiling with sound, listening to the building's subtle noises. Pipes expanding, security systems humming, Conrad's relentless exercise below. She thinks about choices and consequences, about how lives intersect in ways no one can predict. At 5:45, she hears the shower in the gym running. By 6, she's in the kitchen, the smell of coffee drawing her forward. Conrad's footsteps approach. Slower than usual, muscles likely aching from his night of penance. "We need to talk," she says, turning toward the sound of him entering the kitchen. "Whatever you need." His voice is hoarse, stripped of its usual smooth control. Charlotte wraps her hands around her coffee mug, letting its warmth ground her. "I can't change what happened that night. Neither can you. The only way forward is complete transparency. No more omissions, no matter how painful." "Agreed." The single word carries the weight of a vow. "Good." She takes a sip of coffee. "Because we're meeting Gavin at noon." She hears Conrad's shift, attention sharpening. "Where?" "The Glaston atrium. There's a bench under the skylight where the acoustics are perfect. I'll hear anyone approaching from any direction." Her fingers drum once on the mug. Multiple exits, lots of witnesses, and enough echo for me to track movement. Security parameters? Your team can set up wherever they need to, but they stay back unless I signal. This needs to look like a simple meeting between ex-spouses. Charlotte sets her mug down with precise movements. Despite the revelations of the night, despite the burning possibility that Conrad's past decision changed her life forever, she finds her tactical mind taking over. The atrium is her choice, a space she knows intimately from her previous life, where every sound bounces clean and clear off glass and stone. Noon gives us time to prepare, she continues. I want comm checks at 11, and I need the latest surveillance on Gavin's movements. Done. Conrad's response is immediate, professional. He's following her lead, respecting her command of the situation, despite his protective instincts. They spend the next hour planning, their personal revelations set aside in favor of operational details. Charlotte memorizes the team's positions, the timing of check-ins, the exact wording she'll use to draw out Gavin's confession about the Foundation. The morning light strengthens, filtering through windows and warming Charlotte's skin. She feels the weight of the night's revelation, but also a strange sense of clarity. Whatever role Conrad's past played in her story, they're writing new chapters now. One's based on truth, no matter how difficult. At 8, Rox arrives with updated intel. At 9, they run communication checks. By 10, the plan is solid. Every detail accounted for. Through it all, Charlotte holds on to her center, preparing to face not just Gavin, but all the tangled threads of past and present that have led to this moment. Charlotte arrives at the Glaston atrium with 5 minutes to spare, her cane tapping a steady rhythm against the polished stone floor. Each tap echoes off the glass ceiling 40 feet above, creating a sonic map she can navigate by. The sound also serves as a beacon for Rox's team, positioned discreetly around the perimeter. The atrium bustles with lunch hour activity, the click of heels, murmur of conversations, and rustle of shopping bags, creating a complex audio tapestry. Charlotte finds her chosen bench with practiced ease, noting how the ambient noise bounces perfectly off the curved glass walls. She settles, straightening her blazer and keeping her cane close. She catches Gavin's scent, expensive cologne masking nervous sweat, before his footsteps reach her. His designer shoes make a distinctive sound on the stone floor, one she'd memorized during their marriage. He sits heavily beside her, the bench creaking under his weight. "Thank you," Charlotte says with careful precision, "for making it so obvious who you really are." The Foundation records were particularly illuminating. "Always the victim," Gavin sneers, but there's a tremor in his voice. "You should be grateful I got our money out before it was too late." "Our money?" She keeps her tone level, though her fingers tighten on the cane. "The joint account you drained, or the Foundation funds you embezzled?" "You don't understand business," he says, shifting his weight. The bench moves slightly, and Charlotte picks up new footsteps, approaching from 2 directions. Heavy boots trying to step quietly. She's already rising when Gavin signals his men, swinging her cane in a practiced arc that connects with a kneecap. A grunt of pain confirms her hit. She pivots, using the sound of breathing to track the second attacker, but something metallic clatters across the floor. Smoke billows out, filling the atrium with chaos. Screams erupt as people flee. Charlotte holds her breath, but rough hands grab her arms. She fights, landing another strike with her cane before it's wrenched away. They drag her toward the service entrance, her feet scraping against the floor. The van's side door slides open with a distinctive rattle. They shove her inside, the vehicle already moving before the door slams shut. Charlotte forces herself to stay calm, counting seconds between turns. The engine's pitch changes with each acceleration and brake, while road seams slap rhythmically against the tires. She builds a mental map of their route, marking each major turn. 10 minutes east, sharp right. Industrial zone, judging by the reduction in traffic noise. 8 minutes north, parallel to train tracks. She catches the distant whistle. Then the distinctive echo of warehouse districts, sound bouncing off metal buildings. When they finally stop, Charlotte catalogs every detail. Gulls cry overhead, their calls carrying the distinct tone of waterfront scavengers. A foghorn sounds. She counts 30 seconds until it repeats, placing them near the North Harbor. A diesel generator thrums nearby, its steady pulse marking the building's location. Meanwhile, across town, Conrad arrives at the atrium 2 minutes after the abduction. He finds chaos, security guards directing evacuation, smoke still hanging in the air. His knuckles whiten on his phone as Rox feeds him traffic camera data, tracking the van's path through the city grid. "They knew the timing," Rox says, through his earpiece. "Roadblock that delayed you was staged. moving units to the waterfront based on their trajectory. Conrad's Audi roars through traffic, engine snarling as he weaves between cars. The dashboard vibrates with the force of his acceleration, leather creaking under his grip. Every second feels like failure, every red light an eternity. Inside the warehouse, Charlotte sits zip-tied to a metal chair, keeping her breathing steady despite the plastic cutting into her wrists. She listens intently, building a profile of her captors. 3 distinct gates, one heavy-footed with a slight drag in the left step, one with a squeaking boot heel, one with keys jingling at hip level. She presses her panic bracelet against the chair's bolt, carefully scratching out the code she and Conrad had established. Short scratch, long scratch, a signal meaning conscious and tracking. The metal-on-metal sound is barely audible to human ears, but the transmitter will pick it up. The guards pace, their footsteps marking a perimeter she memorizes. The squeaky boot belongs to the most nervous one. His pattern is erratic, suggesting inexperience. The key carrier moves with authority, probably the leader. The limping one favors his left side, more with each pass, likely from her cane strike. Charlotte keeps her head down, appearing defeated while she catalogs every sound. The generator's location relative to the foghorn tells her which wall faces the water. The echo of footsteps reveals support columns and ceiling height. She builds the space in her mind, detail by detail, preparing for whatever comes next. She catches fragments of worried conversation, mentions of veil, and deadline, but focuses more on their positions, their movements, their patterns. Every piece of information is a potential advantage. She continues tapping out her coded message, a steady rhythm beneath the ambient noise. Short, long, short, long. A beacon for those who know how to listen. The warehouse air carries the scent of salt water and rust, with undertones of diesel fuel and damp concrete. Charlotte filters through these sensory inputs, storing them away while maintaining her outward posture of submission. She may be bound, but her mind remains sharp, her hearing acute, gathering intelligence with every passing moment. The rival boss's footsteps approach, expensive leather soles against concrete, unhurried and deliberate. Charlotte tracks his movement, noting how the warehouse acoustics change with his proximity. He stops 3 feet away, the subtle creak of his jacket suggesting he's leaning forward. "Miss Hayes," he says, voice smooth as aged whiskey. "I have a proposition that could change your life." A metallic sound follows, the distinctive ring of surgical steel being placed on a nearby surface. "A scalpel's worth of cooperation, and you could have your sight back by morning." Charlotte keeps her posture neutral, head tilted slightly as if considering. "You have access to ocular implants? Top-shelf technology, German engineering, sign a simple statement about Conrad Vale's involvement in medical graft schemes, and we'll have you in surgery within the hour." He taps the surface beside the scalpel. "Just need your voice on record." "Which implant series?" Charlotte asks, her tone clinical and precise. The KR800 line had compatibility issues with existing optic nerve damage. The boss hesitates, fabric rustling as he shifts position. "The newest ones, best available." "Model number?" Another pause. "Our surgeon has those details." Charlotte presses further, each question revealing their medical ignorance. "What's your operating theater's air exchange rate?" Standard protocol requires 16 complete changes per hour for ocular procedures. "State-of-the-art facility," he deflects. "Everything up to code. The implant's electrode array configuration? Legitimate trials use platinum iridium with specific spacing to prevent tissue rejection." The boss's breathing changes, a slight catch betraying frustration. One of the guards shuffles nervously, his boot sole squeaking against the floor. Charlotte memorizes the sound's location, adding it to her mental map. "You'll have all the paperwork after you sign," the boss says, edge creeping into his voice. "Simple trade, your statement for your site." "I'll need to clean my hands first," Charlotte says. "Surgical protocol, antiseptic wipes." The boss snaps his fingers, sending someone scrambling. Charlotte uses the movement to scrape her bracelet against the chair bolt again. 3 quick scratches followed by 2 long ones. Emergency breach code. The foghorn sounds again. Charlotte counts under her breath. 30 seconds exactly. She tracks the squeaky-booted guard's rotation, noting how he passes the generator every 90 seconds. The pattern tells her they're understaffed, spreading their coverage thin. Across the warehouse district, Conrad's convoy moves like liquid shadow. Engines idle low, lights off, tires crunching softly over broken asphalt. He parks 2 blocks out, hand signals directing his team to flanking positions. The warehouse looms ahead, its metal walls reflecting the harbor's distant lights. Rock slips through the shadows toward the external power junction, tools already in hand. Her movements are precise, practiced, the work of someone who's cut power to dozens of buildings. She signals readiness, waiting for Conrad's mark. Conrad approaches the side entrance, steps silent despite his size. Years of operations have taught him how to move like a ghost when needed. He positions himself, weapon ready, listening to Rox's countdown through his earpiece. Inside, Charlotte catches a new sound, a low electrical hum from a junction box near her chair. She memorizes its location, recognizing it as the backup power supply for emergency lighting. The guards remain oblivious to her careful attention to their movements and the building's infrastructure. "Wipes aren't necessary," the boss says, impatience growing. "The surgery team will prep you." "Basic sterile protocol," Charlotte insists, buying more seconds. "Unless you're state-of-the-art." "Facility skips hand hygiene?" His answer is cut short by darkness crashing down like a wave. The warehouse plunges into perfect black as Rox kills the power. Startled shouts echo off metal walls, footsteps stumbling in sudden blindness. Charlotte moves instantly, driving her heel back into the humming junction box she mapped by sound. A sharp crack, then even the emergency lights die. The darkness becomes complete, Charlotte's natural element. Around her, chaos erupts as guards collide with equipment they can no longer see. The boss curses, his expensive shoes scuffing as he stumbles backward. Charlotte allows herself a small smile, knowing what comes next. The sound of breaking glass signals Conrad's entrance, followed by the controlled rhythm of his team, breaching multiple points. Their movements are practiced, coordinated. They've trained for blackout conditions. Charlotte remains still, tracking positions by sound as Conrad's people flow through the warehouse like water in the dark. The squeaky-booted guard panics, firing blindly. Muzzle flashes strobe the space, momentarily illuminating confusion on faces unused to fighting blind. Each flash gives Charlotte another snapshot of positions, while the guards only destroy their own night vision. She hears Conrad's measured advance, heel-toe steps that speak of absolute confidence in the dark. The boss shouts orders that dissolve into chaos as his men realize they're surrounded by enemies they cannot see. Their training crumbles against opponents who move like they own the darkness. Charlotte focuses on breathing, on staying centered. The zip ties bite into her wrists, but she doesn't struggle. She's mapped every sound, every position, every angle of approach. The darkness isn't her enemy, it's her ally, as natural as breathing. While others flail in fear of the unseen, she sits calmly in the heart of her element, waiting for the moment when sight becomes irrelevant and sound reveals all truth. The warehouse fills with the percussion of precise violence, impacts, grunts, bodies hitting concrete. Through it all, Charlotte tracks Conrad's approach by the whisper of his movement, the controlled power in each step. He's coming for her, and in this perfect darkness, nothing can stop him. Through the perfect darkness, Conrad moved like a predator in his natural habitat. The warehouse air hung thick with tension, punctuated by the scattered sounds of panicked breathing and stumbling feet. 2 o'clock, 3 paces, Charlotte's whisper carried clearly through his earpiece. Her voice was steady, analytical, mapping the space through sound alone. "Watch the beam at shoulder height." Conrad shifted, avoiding the obstacle she'd identified. A guard's ragged breathing gave away his position exactly where Charlotte had indicated. The man never saw the strike coming. Conrad's blow was precise, dropping him without unnecessary force. 4 o'clock, nearer. He's breathing loud, scared. Charlotte continued her guidance. The one trying to control his panic attack. Through the darkness, Conrad tracked his target. Another guard, hyperventilating, weapon scraping against the wall as he tried to orient himself. Before Conrad could strike, Charlotte added quickly, "Not that one. He didn't touch me. Just contain him." Conrad adjusted, switching from lethal intent to calculated restraint. He locked the guard in a hold, securing rather than destroying. The man's resistance was brief before he slumped, unconscious but intact. 9 o'clock, metal scraping, Charlotte directed. Someone's trying to open the side door, the footsteps. She paused, head tilting to catch the sound pattern. "It's Gavin. I know his walk." Conrad moved like smoke toward the exit, hearing the desperate scrabble of hands on metal. Gavin's expensive shoes betrayed his location with every step, the distinct tap of Italian leather against concrete leading Conrad straight to him. He caught Gavin by the throat, weapon raised. The betrayer's pulse raced beneath his fingers. One squeeze would end it, would eliminate the threat to Charlotte permanently. His finger tightened on the trigger. "Leave him breathing," Charlotte's voice cut through his rage. I want the law to see him. I want everyone to see exactly what he is. Conrad fought his instinct to eliminate the threat, but Charlotte's wish was law. Instead of a killing shot, he struck Gavin with calculated force, ensuring he'd wake up in custody with a headache and handcuffs. The rival boss tried to rally his remaining men, shouting orders that echoed off metal walls. Charlotte tracked the sound, giving Conrad vectors to approach. He's backed himself into the corner by the surgical supplies, 3 men with him, all armed. Conrad's team moved in perfect coordination, guided by Charlotte's acoustic map of the space. They neutralized the guards with efficient precision, leaving the boss cornered and alone. The evidence is on the table to your right, Charlotte directed. I heard them laying it out. Ledgers, surgical equipment, recording devices. The extortion tape should be there too. Conrad secured the items she listed, his team collecting everything with practiced efficiency. The forged ledgers would expose the charity fraud. The black market surgical kit would prove their intent, and the boss's own recording of his extortion attempt would seal their fate. In the distance, police sirens began to wail, right on schedule. Conrad's lawyer had arranged the anonymous tip with exact timing, ensuring legitimate law enforcement would arrive to find an abundance of evidence in a warehouse full of incapacitated criminals. Time to go, Conrad said softly into his comm. Rox, clear our exit path. Already done, Rox replied. No cameras, no witnesses, clean corridor to the vehicles. Charlotte stood smoothly when Conrad reached her chair, her movements sheer despite the darkness. She'd mapped every inch of space, through sound alone, more confident in the black than any of them. Your men need medical attention, she noted, head tilting to track the groans around them. But nothing critical. You followed my requests perfectly. Your wishes are my commands, Conrad replied, the words simple but weighted with truth. They moved toward the exit, Charlotte's cane unnecessary with Conrad's guidance. His team flowed around them in practice formation, securing their retreat. The cool night air touched their faces as they emerged from the warehouse. Conrad shrugged off his coat in one smooth motion, settling it over Charlotte's shoulders. The weight of it enveloped her, carrying his warmth and the lingering scent of his cologne. She turned toward him, one hand rising to find his chest. Her forehead came to rest against his sternum, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady beneath her touch. Mine to protect, Conrad said softly, his words meant for her alone. Only if you let me. The harbor breeze carried the scent of salt water and freedom. Behind them, police sirens grew closer, justice approaching on schedule. Charlotte stood in the circle of Conrad's presence, finally allowing herself to process the night's events. His coat around her shoulders felt like armor, like safety, earned rather than imposed. The evidence they'd secured would ensure Gavin and his conspirators faced consequences. The rival boss's attempt to force her into a dangerous surgery would add attempted medical assault to the charges. Every detail Charlotte had gathered through sound, locations, conversations, movements, would strengthen the case against them. Conrad's team moved with quiet efficiency, erasing any trace of their presence. They'd appear as ghosts to the investigating officers, leaving behind only the criminals and their evidence. Charlotte had orchestrated a perfect convergence of justice and vengeance, legal consequences aligned with personal retribution. The night wrapped around them like a protective shroud as they prepared to depart. Charlotte's world had always been defined by sound and touch, but now those senses carried new meaning. The steady rhythm of Conrad's breath, the solid strength of his presence, the way his team moved in perfect coordination to her guidance. She had transformed her blindness from vulnerability to power, using it to orchestrate the downfall of those who'd betrayed her. 3 weeks passed in a blur of legal documents and healing. Charlotte maintained a rigorous schedule, arriving at physical therapy each morning as sunlight warmed the clinic's windows. She practiced with determination, learning new navigation techniques, strengthening her spatial awareness, and adapting to the constant evolution of her circumstances. Conrad became a silent guardian, his presence a constant, just beyond the therapy room's door. He never presumed, never inserted himself uninvited. When Charlotte called him in, he entered with measured steps, allowing her to direct their interactions. The power remained firmly in her hands. The legal machinery ground forward with inexorable purpose. Gavin's smugness crumbled during depositions as evidence mounted. Wire transfers, proving charity fraud, recorded calls revealing racketeering, and surveillance footage documenting her kidnapping. His desperate attempts to plea bargain only emphasized his guilt. The rival boss faced even steeper charges. Medical assault carried heavy penalties, and his recorded attempt to force an illegal surgery destroyed any chance of leniency. Charlotte's detailed testimony about the warehouse, every sound, movement, and conversation she'd tracked provided devastating corroboration. But while justice took its course, Conrad focused on a different path. He channeled his resources into legitimate channels, working through proper legal frameworks to fund research at the forefront of optical medicine. Dr. Bennett Shaw's innovative procedure showed promise for restoring light perception in certain cases of blindness. Charlotte approached the opportunity with characteristic thoroughness. She insisted on independent legal counsel to review every document, every commitment, every possible obligation. Conrad not only accepted, but encouraged her diligence, signing away any claim to influence her medical decisions. The choice would be hers alone, as would all choices moving forward. Dr. Shaw's credentials proved impeccable. His research was peer-reviewed, his methods transparent, his ethics beyond reproach. He explained every step of the procedure in clear terms, answering Charlotte's questions with patience and precision. When she finally consented, it was with complete understanding and autonomy. The morning of the procedure arrived crisp and clear, though Charlotte could only feel the temperature on her skin as she entered the hospital. The operation itself passed in a haze of controlled sedation. When she woke, the sensation was strange, a warmth beneath her skin, like sunshine trapped under the surface. Recovery demanded patience. Hours passed in careful monitoring, with Dr. Shaw checking her responses regularly. Charlotte focused on breathing through the discomfort, tracking time by the rhythm of medical equipment and footsteps in the hallway. As evening approached, something changed. At first, she thought she was imagining it, a subtle difference in the darkness she'd known for so long. But gradually the sensation solidified, a definite glow, a presence of light where the window should be. Her heart raced as she confirmed it wasn't just hope or wishful thinking. Then another shape emerged, a tall figure standing perfectly still in the doorway. Charlotte knew immediately it was Conrad, would have known even without the ability to perceive his silhouette. He remained motionless, respecting her space as always, waiting for her signal. "Come closer," she said, her voice soft but steady. His outline sharpened as he approached, a dark shape moving through the dim light. She couldn't make out his features, couldn't see the details of his face, but the ability to perceive his presence visually after knowing him only through sound and touch was overwhelming. Tears traced down her cheeks, but they were tears of wonder rather than sadness. Dr. Shaw had been careful not to promise too much, had emphasized that light perception might be the maximum outcome. But after years of complete darkness, even this much felt miraculous. When Charlotte was cleared to leave her room, Conrad guided her to the hospital's terrace. The city spread out before them, a tapestry of lights that she could finally perceive. Each glowing point represented a window, a street lamp, a sign, constellations of urban life that had been hidden from her for so long. She reached out, finding Conrad's chest with practiced ease. Her palm settled over his heart, feeling its strong, steady rhythm. The beat matched perfectly with the man she'd come to know through every sense but sight. Powerful, yet gentle. Dangerous, yet careful. Always matching his pace to her needs. The evening air carried the scent of approaching autumn, crisp and clean above the city. Charlotte stood absorbing the dual sensations. The visual wonder of the lights spread before her, and the tactile comfort of Conrad's presence beside her. Each light point seemed to pulse with possibility, with promise. Medical staff moved quietly behind them, respecting the moment. Dr. Shaw had already scheduled follow-up appointments, his commitment to her case unwavering. The procedure's success, even at this basic level, offered hope for others facing similar challenges. Charlotte traced the city's glow with her newly awakened perception, matching the visual input with her detailed mental map of sound and space. Each reference point aligned perfectly, expanding her understanding of the world she navigated so confidently by other means. The terrace offered a perfect vantage point, elevated above the city's constant motion. Traffic flows below created rivers of moving lights, while building windows formed geometric patterns against the darkening sky. It was a symphony of illumination that Charlotte could finally witness, adding a new dimension to her already acute understanding of urban rhythms. The converted brewery glowed with warmth on that Saturday morning, its industrial bones softened by scattered flowers and the quiet murmur of carefully chosen guests. No phones buzzed, no cameras flashed, just the honest presence of people who understood the weight of what they witnessed. Charlotte stood in a simple cream dress, her cane set aside for the moment as she held Conrad's hands. Her vision therapy had progressed enough that she could make out his silhouette in the natural light streaming through the high windows, though details remained impressionist blurs. It didn't matter. She knew every plane of his face by heart, mapped through. Touch and trust over their months together. The past weeks had been full. Rehabilitation sessions where Conrad waited patiently outside, court proceedings where her testimony helped seal Gavin's fate, and long nights planning the foundation that would become her legacy. She'd insisted on building something meaningful from the trauma, creating a system to protect and support other women facing medical discrimination or abuse. When they spoke their vows, the words carried the weight of everything they'd survived together. Conrad's voice, usually sharp with command, softened to a fierce tenderness as he promised to keep his violence separate from their sanctuary, to be her shield without becoming her cage. "The world sees the monster," he said, his thumbs brushing her knuckles. "You'll only know the man who bows to your boundaries, who kills for business but lives for your smile." Charlotte's vows rang clear and strong through the space, each word chosen with precision. "I choose you freely, knowing exactly who you are. I'll keep choosing you every day while standing firm in who I am. My independence isn't a threat to our love. It's why our love works." The small gathering of witnesses, a mix of Conrad's trusted inner circle and civilian allies Charlotte had made through her advocacy work, responded with quiet approval. These were people who understood the delicate balance of power and protection, who recognized that true strength could coexist with tender care. A violinist played during the informal reception, the notes dancing through the brewery's excellent acoustics. Charlotte had chosen the musician herself, appreciating how the classical pieces were adapted with subtle modern edges. The music wrapped around them as they shared warm, fresh bread, a symbol of home and sustenance that meant more than any fancy catering could have. Laughter came easily, genuine and unforced. Rox told stories about Conrad's first fumbling attempts to accommodate Charlotte's needs in the safe house, while Charlotte's foundation colleagues shared their amazement at watching the fearsome crime boss defer to their blind friend's expertise in accessibility law. When they finally retired to their room, their shared space, chosen and arranged together, the air hummed with anticipation and trust. Every touch was preceded by quiet questions. Each advance waited for clear consent. They had learned this dance over months, the careful choreography of desire bounded by respect. Conrad's hands, capable of such violence, turned impossibly gentle on her skin. Charlotte guided him with words and touches, their intimacy built on absolute clarity about what she wanted and when she wanted it. The heat between them burned no less fierce for being contained within these careful borders. Morning found them in the kitchen, sharing the first coffee of their married life. Sunlight streamed through the windows, catching dust motes in golden beams that Charlotte could now perceive as shifting patterns of brightness. She reached up to trace Conrad's jaw just as she had that first evening when she'd mapped his features with her fingertips. "I was never useless," she said, feeling the smile curve under her touch. "You knew that before I did." Their foundation work continued to expand, providing legal aid and medical advocacy for disabled women caught in abusive situations. Charlotte's personal experience shaped the organization's approach, always empowering, never patronizing. Her visual gains, though modest, added weight to her advocacy for medical access and research funding. Months passed, marked by small victories and quiet moments. The foundation grew, establishing partnerships with legitimate medical researchers and protective services. Charlotte crafted her speech for their first major fundraising event with the same precision she'd once used to map rooms by sound. Standing at the podium, her words carried authority earned through both struggle and triumph. She spoke about agency, about the right to make informed choices about one's own body and care. The audience included medical professionals, legal advocates, and potential donors, all carefully vetted to ensure security without compromising the foundation's legitimate status. At the back of the room, Conrad stood silent and still, his presence felt even if Charlotte couldn't clearly see him at that distance. He had found his peace in this role, protecting without possessing, supporting without controlling. The man who terrorized rivals and commanded an empire with brutal efficiency had learned to be still, to listen, to follow her lead in the spaces that mattered most. Their love hadn't softened his edges where sharpness was needed, hadn't compromised his position in the underworld. Instead, it had given him purpose beyond power, showing him that true strength sometimes meant standing back while the woman he loved fought her own battles. For Charlotte, his support had never meant surrender. She had built something meaningful on her own terms, using legitimate channels to create change. Her blindness remained a part of her story, but not its definition. She was advocate, founder, wife, each role chosen freely, each boundary maintained with loving clarity. They had found their balance, monster and activist, protector and pioneer, proving that love could thrive in the spaces between power and vulnerability, between darkness and light.